Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely tear down the invisible magic that connects all your smart devices. We live in a world absolutely surrounded by these invisible tethers. They link everything from our wireless headphones to that smart thermostat on the wall, right down to the fitness tracker on your wrist. But have you ever actually stopped to wonder how exactly these devices talk to each other without just completely draining their batteries in a matter of hours?
Well, we're going to frame our entire journey today around one central, really fascinating mystery. How in the world can a tiny little heart rate monitor run for a whole year on a single tiny coin cell battery while your incredibly powerful smartphone needs to be charged every single day? Seriously, think about how counterintuitive that is. Your phone has this massive, advanced lithium-ion battery, yet it's practically begging for a charger before dinner. Meanwhile, this tiny little sensor running on a battery the size of a nickel just survives for seasons on end without ever seeing a wall outlet. The answer to this riddle is honestly a masterpiece of modern engineering.
So, to solve this little mystery, we're going to tear down how this works step by step. Here's our game plan. First, we'll meet Bluetooth Low Energy. Then, we'll uncover the secret, race to idle. After that, we'll look at device roles, central versus peripheral. Next up is GAP, making the connection, followed by GATT, organizing the data. And finally, we'll wrap things up by comparing BLE versus Wi-Fi.
All right, let's jump right into step 1. Meet Bluetooth Low Energy, or BLE for short. Let's start with a quick timeline, just to establish that this absolutely isn't your parents' Bluetooth. If we trace the history from Bluetooth 1.1 back in 2002 up through Bluetooth 3.0 in 2009, engineers had this one singular obsessive focus: speed. They just wanted to push more data much faster. And they did. They jumped all the way from 1 megabit per second up to 24 megabits per second. But, well, there was a massive problem with that. In the world of radio frequency, high speed and constant transmission equal extremely high power consumption. Pushing 24 megabits of data means the radio has to stay on longer and work way harder, which literally shreds a battery. But that all changed in 2010. While those older versions were built for raw speed, Bluetooth 4.0 introduced an entirely new protocol engineered specifically for ultra-low power consumption. It was a total paradigm shift for the Internet of Things.
Now, this new protocol, which you might also see branded as Bluetooth Smart or BLE, operates on the free 2.4 GHz band, which is kind of wild because this is the exact same super crowded radio frequency used by your microwave, baby monitors, your neighbor's Wi-Fi router, and those old cordless phones. So how does it survive all that noise without just shouting louder and wasting battery? Well, it uses a brilliant technique called frequency hopping spread spectrum. Think of it like a car driving on a massive 40-lane highway. To perfectly avoid traffic jams, this car is constantly changing lanes, literally thousands of times a second. BLE physically splits the 2.4 GHz band into 40 distinct radio frequency channels. The sender and the receiver are perfectly synchronized to hop to the exact same lane at the exact same millisecond. It elegantly dodges interference, and honestly, it makes the tech feel like pure magic.
Okay, moving on to step 2. The secret, race to idle. What exactly is the secret sauce that makes that little coin cell battery last for over 12 months?
The official technical term you're going to want to remember here is the race to idle. This is the absolute core, fundamental power-saving philosophy of Bluetooth Low Energy. You see, the most power-hungry part of any wireless device, by far, is the radio transceiver. So BLE is designed to keep that radio powered on for as little time as physically possible and then completely shut it down immediately after transmitting. Think of it as an Olympic sprinter who wakes up, runs incredibly fast for just a fraction of a microsecond, and then instantly falls back into a deep, deep sleep. In fact, the actual window for connection and disconnection in BLE only lasts about 6 milliseconds. For the other 99% of the time, the radio is functionally dead. By staying in this deep idle state for as long as possible, the mathematical power drain basically rounds down to zero.
Which brings us to step 3, device roles, central versus peripheral. To actually pull off this extreme power efficiency, BLE strictly divides its devices into a specific cast of characters. Just take a look at how the workload is split here. We've got two main terms to understand: the central, sometimes called the master, and the peripheral, or the slave. Think of the central, like the smartphone on the left, as a busy manager. It has abundant battery power, a ton of computing resources, and it's the one actively scanning the environment. Now over on the right, we have the peripheral, like a little embedded ARM chip inside a tiny heart rate sensor. Think of the peripheral as a highly specialized worker. Because it's so constrained by its tiny battery, it stays completely asleep until the manager specifically requests data. The peripheral is essentially deaf and blind until it decides to wake up, which conserves massive amounts of energy.
It can't force the central to scan. It literally just waits to be found.
All right, step 4, gap, making the connection. Before these two devices can share a single byte of data, they have to physically meet in the digital world. This is handled by a layer called the Generic Access Profile, or GAP.
I want you to think of GAP as a giant professional networking event. When you first walk into a networking event, what's the first thing you do? You walk around handing out business cards, right? Well, that's advertising mode. The Peripheral wakes up and uses 3 dedicated advertising channels, out of the 40 total available, to broadcast its presence. It's literally shouting, "Hey, here's my business card, I'm a heart rate monitor," to anyone listening. Now, you might be wondering why only 3 channels, because scanning all 40 lanes looking for a single business card would take way too much time and energy. Limiting it to 3 makes discovery incredibly fast and highly efficient. Once the central smartphone hears this and decides, yep, I want to connect, they enter connected mode. This is exactly like stepping out of the noisy, crowded networking floor and slipping into a private room for a quiet, one-on-one conversation. They stop shouting on those 3 advertising channels and seamlessly move their private chat over to the remaining 37 data channels.
Next up is step 5, GATT, organizing the data. So, once GAP gets them into that private room and the secure connection is alive, how do they actually organize what they're saying to each other?
That brings us to the Generic Attribute Profile, or GATT. If GAP was the networking event, I want you to think of GATT as a highly organized filing cabinet sitting right there inside that private room. GATT structures the data hierarchically, so the central always knows exactly what it's reading without wasting any time. It starts at the top with step 1, a profile. This just describes the general use case. You open that drawer and you find step 2, a service folder. Let's say it's the heart rate monitor service. Inside that specific folder is step 3, a characteristic document. This holds the actual raw data, like the number 72 for your current beats per minute. But what does that raw number 72 actually mean? That is where step 4, the descriptor, comes into play. Think of the descriptor as a little sticky note attached to the document that gives you the metadata. It explains the units, like beats per minute. So it's profile, service, characteristic, descriptor. Cabinet, folder, document, sticky note. It is just a brilliantly efficient way to pass data without wasting any of that precious battery life on unnecessary context.
Finally, step 6, BLE versus Wi-Fi. To really grasp the big picture here, it's absolutely crucial to understand why engineers would choose BLE over a standard household name like Wi-Fi.
Because, as we know, you can't have it all in engineering. Everything is a trade-off. Just look at the stark contrast in these features. Wi-Fi is built to stream massive gigabytes of data, like, say, a 4K movie, over a local area network, or WLAN, which is designed to connect your entire house. But this comes at a really steep cost, high battery drain. If you tried to cram standard Wi-Fi into a tiny fitness wristband, it would be dead in a matter of hours. So BLE makes a deliberate, brilliant sacrifice. It trades away that heavy data throughput, maxing out at just 1 megabit per second, so it can become the ultimate champion of low power. Instead of a big WLAN, it creates a personal area network, or a PAN. This is tailor-made for exchanging tiny little bursts of sensor data, strictly between devices worn close to your body, allowing them to last for a year or more on a single coin cell battery.
So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that Bluetooth Low Energy isn't just some weaker, watered-down version of Wi-Fi. It is a completely different tool, engineered from the ground up for a completely different job. The next time you pair up a smart gadget, take a second to look around your room and ask yourself, which of your devices are the power-hungry centrals managing the network, and which are the clever little peripherals, quickly passing you their business card before racing right back to idle. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. See you next time.